I stepped through the cemetery gate at dawn, carrying a single daisy for Grandma. And that was when I saw him, a tiny golden puppy planted beside an old moss-covered headstone like a soldier on duty. He didn't bark or whine, he just stared at the stone, tail curled around trembling paws, as if the marble might speak if he waited long enough. My sneakers crunched on gravel, but the puppy didn't flinch. The air smelled of wet earth from the night's drizzle. I knelt, holding out the daisy's stem. "Hey, little guy," I whispered. He sniffed, but stayed seated, eyes wide, hopeful and terrified at the same time. My heart pinched. A lonely puppy in a graveyard before sunrise. Something felt wrong. Grandma's plot was 2 rows back, yet I couldn't leave him. I set the flower on Grandma's marker, whispered my usual hello, then hurried back. The puppy still hadn't moved. His ribs showed through damp fur. I broke half my granola bar into crumbs and stretched my hand toward him. He leaned forward, licking the crumbs with slow, careful swipes, never lifting his gaze from the stone. "Are you waiting for someone?" I asked. He answered with a soft whimper and pressed his head against the cold marble dot. Cemetery caretaker, Mr. Harlan, shuffled up the path, lantern swinging. "Morning, Sarah," he greeted, voice graveled-like. "The walkway, morning," I replied, stroking the puppy's ears. He frowned. "Strays never last here. Coyotes, cars, animal control, you name it, best not get attached." My chest tightened. "But he isn't hurting anyone." "Rules are rules," he muttered, moving on to trim wilted flowers. I turned back to the puppy. "I'm Sarah," I said gently. "You need a name." Sunlight slipped through grey clouds, painting his fur honey bright. "Sunny," I decided. His ears perked as if he understood. I checked the stone he guarded. The name and dates were hidden beneath thick moss. I brushed at it, but the green carpet clung stubbornly. Sunny wind, pouring the soil as though protecting. "A secret. Okay, okay," I assured him. "I won't pry." A distant bell told 7. School would start soon, and Mum would worry if I missed the bus again. I pulled my backpack on. "I have to go," I said, "but I'll come back tomorrow, promise." Sunny's eyes followed me to the gate, a silent plea not to break my word. All day, math problems blurred behind thoughts of the cemetery. At lunch, my best friend Layla waved a chip in front of my face. "Earth to Sarah," she teased. "You look haunted." I told her about the puppy. She smiled softly. Maybe he's guarding someone he loved. Dogs don't understand death. I argued. "Maybe love is bigger than understanding," she said. Her words clung to me like morning mist. After school, instead of texting friends, I googled dogs waiting at graves. Thousands of stories popped up: Hachiko in Japan, Greyfriars Bobby in Scotland. Dogs, it seemed, could wait forever. That evening, storm clouds gathered. Wind rattled the kitchen window as Mum sliced carrots for soup. "How was school?" she asked. I hesitated. "I met a puppy at the cemetery." Mum's knife paused. "Sarah, you know we can't have pets." "The landlord, I know," I interrupted, "but he's alone, and Mr. Harlan said animal control might take him." Mum sighed. "I'm sorry, honey." Lightning flashed. An idea sparked brighter. What if he belongs to someone buried there? "Dogs don't understand graves," she repeated, but her eyes softened. That night, raindrops drummed the roof. I lay awake picturing Sunny, curled in mud, shaking, still watching that stone. I felt the promise I'd made pulse inside my chest, like a second heartbeat. Before dawn, I filled a thermos with warm broth, stuffed towels into my backpack, and slipped out the door. The storm had eased to a drizzle, but puddles glimmered like mirrors on the road. The cemetery gate groaned as I pushed through. "Sonny," I called softly. No answer. Panic flared until I reached the headstone and saw him drenched, exhausted, yet unbroken, guarding his post. I wrapped a towel around his shivering body. He licked my wrist gratefully. I poured broth into a plastic lid. He drank in tiny gulps, strength returning with each sip. "I'm here," I whispered. "I didn't forget." The sky brightened, revealing the headstone's name where rain had rinsed away some moss. Leo Carson. The letters glowed pale against the damp granite. Rain or my tears, I couldn't tell, blurred my vision. Footsteps approached. Mr. Harlan again, shaking his head. "Back already." "I made a promise," I said, shoulders firm. He sighed. "Animal control's coming tomorrow morning." I hugged Sonny tighter. "Then I have one day to figure out the truth." Sonny pressed his nose to my cheek, as if agreeing to our new mission. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, signaling morning. The journey had begun. I hurried Sonny under a yew tree while Mr. Harlan trimmed branches. "Please, sir," I begged, "give me until tomorrow night. If I can't prove he belongs here, I'll call animal control myself." He studied the pup. "You've got spirit, kid. One day, no more." "Thanks." I breathed. School crawled. Between classes, I slipped into the library and asked Mrs. Duncan for old cemetery ledgers. She raised an eyebrow. "Researching ghosts." "Something like that," I muttered. In brittle pages, I found Leo Carson's burial date 10 months ago. A margin note read, "Family dog missing." My pulse hammered. I photographed the entry, hope surging dot. After dinner, I spread the photo, notes, and Grandma's flashlight across my desk. Thunder grumbled outside. Mum leaned on the doorframe, still thinking about that dog. "I can't leave him," I said Dot. She sighed and set a thermos beside me. "Broth for tomorrow. Dry socks too. Will you drive me at dawn?" She nodded. "Promises matter," I whispered. "So does love." Feeling Sonny's vigil tug me onward. Outside, the wind whispered, like a dark warning. Tomorrow had to bring answers or farewell. If you feel connected to this story, please like, share, and let know your city or country below. Rain hammered the windshield while Mum guided the car toward the cemetery gate. I clutched the thermos of warm broth and the dry socks she had packed, heart pounding harder than the wipers. The promise I made to Sonny felt heavier than my backpack. Ever did. Bomb stopped beside the iron arch. "I'll wait here," she said. I nodded, shoved the door open, and let the storm soak my hoodie in seconds. Gravel squelched under my sneakers. Lightning cracked, turning headstones white for a blink. "Sonny," I called, voice tearing through the rain. A faint whimper answered. He huddled against Leo's stone, fur plastered flat, eyes shining like 2 small moons. I opened the umbrella and knelt. "You stubborn pup," I whispered. He licked my hand, shivering but refusing to move. I wrapped him in the towel, set the umbrella over us both, and poured broth into the lid. He sipped between claps of thunder. Wind bent the yew branches, spraying needles across the grave. Still he stayed, nose pressed to the marble, as if guarding treasure. Mr. Harlan appeared. Lantern bobbing. "Storm's nasty," he called. "Bring him to the shed till it passes." I shook my head. "He won't leave. He needs this spot." Harlan sighed. "Stray or not, That dog's got purpose. He trudged away, boots splashing, eye scratched. Behind Sonny's ears. Who were you waiting for? The letters Leo Carson glistened under beads of water. I traced them softly and felt Sonny's body tense. Is Leo your boy? A fresh wave of rain forced us closer. My knees sank into mud, but Sonny's gaze never wavered. Mum honked once, worried. I waved so she'd see I was fine. Water pooled around the grave, turning paths into brown rivers. I shifted to my feet. We'll drown out here, I muttered. Sonny dug claws into the sod. I swallowed. Okay, 10 more minutes, then we break for the shed. Promise. Thunder boomed again. Somewhere behind the trees, a car door slammed. An Orange County truck lurked near the fence-animal control, arriving. Early, fear sliced through me. I scooped Sonny into my arms. They can't take you, I said. He whimpered, wriggling, wanting the stone. Officer Briggs emerged, raincoat shining. Miss, that strays county property. Hand him over. I tightened my grip. He's not a stray, he belongs here. Briggs frowned. Belongings proved with papers, not feelings. Step aside. Sonny squirmed harder. I whispered, trust me. Then I sprinted toward the far wall, boots splashing like drums. Briggs shouted and gave chase. My umbrella flipped inside out, useless. I tossed it, hugged Sonny closer, and veered. Between statues, wet branches clawed my face. Lightning lit a gap ahead broken railings near the old maintenance shed. I dove inside, slamming the wooden door. The shed smelled of oil and pine. I set Sonny down. He shook, spraying droplets like gold dust. Outside, Briggs pounded on the door. You're making this worse, kid. I spotted a latch, slid it shut, heart racing. Sonny pressed against my leg. It's okay, I whispered, but the lie tasted. Sour rain drummed the roof like angry fists. Briggs's footsteps faded, maybe circling for another way in. I scanned shelves of rusty tools until a dusty ledger caught my eye. Burial records, 2020 to 2024. My fingers trembled as I opened. 2L there, in neat ink, was Leo Carson, age 8, died March last year. A note beside his name read, Family dog, Lucky missing. Lucky. My breath hitched. Sonny, you're lucky, I murmured. He tilted his head, as if remembering a distant voice. Briggs rattled the latch. Last warning, open up. I tucked the ledger into my backpack, grabbed Sonny, and looked at the back window, a single pane secured by one rusty screw. I nudged it, the screw loosened, glass swinging outward. Wind sprayed cold rain across my face. Ready? I asked. Sonny licked my chin. I slipped through, landing in wet grass behind the shed, then helped him out. We crouched under a cedar. Briggs's angry footsteps stormed inside the shed, now empty. I dashed across the rear field, past leaning stones, until Mom's car came into view. She flung the passenger door open. Get in. I tumbled inside with Sonny. Mum sped off before Briggs reached the gate. My lungs burned, but relief flooded me. Mum glanced at the soaked puppy. Sarah, what did you do? Saved a promise, I said. And learned his real name is Lucky. He belonged to Leo Carson. Mum's eyes widened. The boy from the fire. I nodded. Lucky never stopped waiting. We need proof, so nobody can take him again. Mum breathed out slowly. We'll figure it out together. Lucky curled into my lap, finally closing his eyes as rain hammered the roof. I stroked his damp fur and whispered, "I'll find your boy's story, I swear it." Thunder rolled like distant drums, but inside the car, hope felt warm as summer sun. At home, we crept up the stairs, praying the landlord didn't hear claws on the steps. Mum laid Lucky beside the heater, rubbing him with a beach towel until his shivers slowed. He sniffed every corner, finally curling on my science fair poster. I brewed cocoa while Mum searched online records. "Leo's mother is Evelyn Carson," she said. "She hasn't left her house since the fire." "That's one street from school," I noted. Lucky perked up at the name, tail thumping weakly. Mum continued, "If she identifies him, animal control loses its case." I knelt, meeting Lucky's tired eyes. "Want to visit her tomorrow?" He licked my wrist like a yes. Mum shut the laptop. "First classes, then we'll take him and the ledger page." Fear flickered inside me. Briggs will hunt us. Mum's voice grew firm. "Promises matter more than threats." Rain eased outside, tapping gentle rhythms on the pane. Midnight blinked on the stove clock. Lucky sighed across my lap, finally drifting to sleep, guarding the quiet house the way he guarded Leo's grave faithfully. Rain had stopped by morning, but grey clouds still crowded the sky when I woke to Lucky's soft nose nudging my arm. Mum slipped a finger to her lips, reminding me the landlord downstairs hated surprises with 4 paws. We tiptoed through breakfast. Lucky padded after me like a shadow, tail brushing table legs, eyes searching for the grave he'd left behind. "Keep him hidden till you get home," Mum whispered while packing my lunch. "We'll figure out the next step tonight." I crouched, tying my sneakers. "I promise, Lucky, we'll go back. I just need proof first." He licked my cheek, trusting me the way sunlight trusts dawn. School felt longer than January. In math, I drew paw prints across my workbook. In history, the teacher's voice drowned beneath the memory of Leo Carson's name gleaming wet on marble. When the bell finally shrieked, I ran for the library. Old newspapers lay in metal drawers that squealed louder than lockers. I copied 2 articles about the fire that took Leo's life and the missing pup named Lucky. My hands shook, but hope warmed my pockets. Rain greeted me outside, heavier than a secret. I pedaled home through curtains of water, tires hissing on asphalt. Inside, Lucky bounded from the closet, tail thumping boxers. Thunder boomed so close the windows rattled. Mom set down her phone. "Forecast says it'll worsen tonight." "We have to take him back," I said. "He's restless. He doesn't belong inside 4 walls." Mum's gaze softened. "I'll drive you after dinner, but Sarah, be careful." Dusk slid over town like an old quilt. We parked outside the cemetery, where lamps flickered weakly against the storm. I opened the door. Rain slapped my face, cold and urgent. Lucky leapt out, paws splashing puddles, then bolted toward Leo's headstone. Guided by something older than maps, gravel paths were now muddy rivers, dragging dead leaves downstream. I chased him beneath an umbrella that bent against screaming. Wind, lightning turned every stone into a ghostly flashcard. Lucky reached the grave and sat, shoulders squared. Rain washed his fur flat, but he refused to budge. "I'm here," I panted, crouching beside him. He pressed against my leg, shivering yet unbroken. I flipped the umbrella sideways, shielding him and half myself. Water dripping onto my backpack. "I'll find out who you're waiting for," I whispered. "I give my word." Lucky answered with a low whine that sounded like gratitude. Lantern light bobbed between trees. Mr. Harlan emerged, coat flapping like a sail. "Thought the storm would keep you away," he called over the wind. "Promises?" "Matter," I replied. He stopped near us, raising the lantern. Its glow revealed swirling rain like falling sparks. "That grave holds more sadness than you know," he said. "But digging up the past hurts." "I'm not scared of hurt," I shot back. "Leo had a dog. This is him." Harlan's eyes softened. "If that's true, bring proof quickly." "The county's coming again." Thunder cracked. Lightning stitched the sky. Harlan tipped his hat and disappeared, lantern fading to a dull star among tombstones. Lucky laid his head on my sneaker. I stroked his soaked ears. "We have articles," I said, voice shaking, "but we still need Leo's mum to see you." Wind ripped the umbrella from my grasp. It tumbled across graves like a dark kite. Rain battered us in icy sheets, yet Lucky stayed, eyes locked on the stone, devotion stronger than weather. Mum honked once, urging me back. I hesitated. 5 minutes, I murmured. Lucky stared, unmoving. I took off my jacket, draped it over. Him, despite the chill creeping into my bones. "I'm not leaving you alone tonight," I declared. We huddled together, rainwater creeping under my collar. The world shrank to 2 heartbeats and 1 silent promise. Through the roar I heard faint. Church, bells 8, a clock, maybe 9. Time blurred when hope was the only clock. Finally, Mum's flashlight sliced the dark. "Sarah," she yelled, "you'll both freeze." I stood, legs stiff. Lucky rose too, but when I turned for the gate, he sat again, refusing. My throat thickened. "He can't leave," I called to Mum. She trudged over, boots sinking. "We'll stay till the rain eases, then lure him with treats," she said. We settled beneath the yew tree. Mum handed me a thermos. Steam coiled upward like a second lantern. I poured broth into the lid. Lucky drank, eyes never straying far from Leo's name. Lightning flashed, illuminating deep grooves in the headstone I hadn't noticed. Maybe they were claw marks, or perhaps cracks from age. Either way, they whispered stories that words hadn't. Told Mum squeezed my shoulder. "You're brave," she muttered. "Love makes bravery," I replied, voice small. Hours passed in damp silence, broken only by thunder and Lucky's occasional sigh. The storm began to tire. Rain softened to a curtain of mist. I stood, soaked to skin. "We have to go," I told Lucky gently. "But I'll be back tomorrow with proof, I swear." He looked at me, tail twitching with torn loyalty. I stepped. Backward, after a moment, he followed, one reluctant paw at a time. At the gate, I glanced over my shoulder. A single beam from Harlan's lantern flickered near Leo's grave, as if guarding Lucky's promise until dawn. I tightened my scarf. Tomorrow had to deliver answers, because time and Tident County trucks wait for no dog, no matter how loyal. Lucky pressed against my leg, and together we walked into the thinning rain. Our promise burning brighter than any lantern. Back home, Mum spread blankets beside the heater. Lucky curled up, exhausted, rising warmth fogging his fur. I taped the soaked articles to dry above the vent. "Tomorrow," Mom said softly, "we'll talk to Mrs. Carson." I nodded, eyes red with sleepless hope. Lucky lifted his head, offering. A gentle paw, as if sealing our pact. Thunder in the distance faded to a quiet rumble, and for the first time I believed we might win. Morning light seeped between curtains, painting golden lines across my bedroom wall. I sat on the floor beside the heater where Lucky still slept, paws twitching through a dream of running. Damp articles about the fire fluttered on the vent, dry enough to read without tearing. Mum peeked in, a steaming mug in her hand. "Cold cereal's ready," she whispered, careful not to wake the landlord. I nodded, slipping the papers into my backpack next to yesterday's muddy jacket at school. The hallways buzzed about quizzes and soccer tryouts, yet my mind throbbed with one name: Leo Carson. Layla spotted the distraction and steered me toward the library before first bell. "What did you drag me into now?" she asked, flipping her braid behind her shoulder. I spread the clippings across a study table. "A promise," I said. "Help." "Me keep it." Mrs. Duncan, the librarian, raised an eyebrow. "Microfilm again, Sarah." "This time, I swear," I answered. We loaded dusty reels into the viewer. Headlines flickered. House fire claims child, dog missing after tragedy, vigil. HELD. My stomach knotted while Layla read aloud. 80-year-old Leo Carson died when flames engulfed his home. Family pet presumed lost, she murmured. I whispered, Lucky didn't run. He stayed searching until smoke took him away. Layla's voice softened, or he escaped and kept looking. We printed copies of every article mentioning Leo, the fire, or the missing dog. When the machine jammed, a teacher scolded us for skipping homeroom, but Layla covered. History project, she lied. Between classes, I searched yearbooks in the trophy hallway. Leo's third-grade photo showed a grinning boy with freckles, hugging a small puppy that looked exactly like Lucky. Same golden ears, same hopeful eyes. The caption read, "Leo and Lucky, best friends forever." Tears blurred the page. I snapped a phone picture and slid the book back before the bell rang. Chemistry, algebra, English, they all dissolved behind a single thought. Lucky had waited almost a year for someone who would never return. Lunch period brought drizzle against cafeteria windows. I barely touched my sandwich. Layla nudged me. "What's the plan?" "Prove Lucky as Leo's, then give him back to Mrs. Carson," I answered. "You've never even met her," she reminded me. "Tonight," I said. After class, thunder rolled in distant hills as the final bell released us. I biked home under low clouds, heart racing faster than my wheels. Inside, Lucky spun circles of joy, then nudged the door, already sensing another journey. I packed the printed articles, the yearbook photo, and a Ziploc of dog treats. Mum handed me her umbrella and a flashlight. "Be polite, be honest," she advised. "Grief can be fragile." We walked 2 blocks to the Carson house, once bright yellow, now dull grey with shutters boarded on one side. Charred beams still scarred the attic window. We paused at the sagging gate. Lucky whimpered, tail low, recognizing a smell only he could remember. I knocked softly. Footsteps shuffled, then silence. I tried again. Finally, the door opened a crack, revealing a pale woman wrapped in a worn cardigan. Her eyes were hollow wells of sleepless nights. "Yes?" she asked, voice barely above a breath. I swallowed. "Mrs. Carson." "I'm Sarah. This is Lucky." Her gaze dropped to the dog. Lucky's ears pricked as he stepped forward, nose twitching. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then Mrs. Carson gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Lucky," she whispered, "Lucky." Wind and leaned into her leg. Something inside her seemed to break and mend at once. Tears slipped free as she knelt, stroking his damp fur. I opened my backpack, holding out the articles and photos. I found proof he's yours. Her fingers trembled over the image of Leo hugging the puppy. She choked a sob. My Leo, he loved this dog more than anything. Lucky waited at his grave every day, I said. He never gave up. Thunder rumbled nearer, shaking loose raindrops from brittle gutters. Mrs. Carson stood, voice steadier. Come in before the storm grows. Inside, the living room smelled of ash and lavender polish. Framed pictures lined a dusty mantel. Leo on a bike, Leo in a Halloween cape, Leo blowing candles, while Lucky licked icing. Each photo was a memory frozen before the fire. Lucky padded to the fireplace's blackened bricks and lay down, head resting where embers once glowed. Mrs. Carson sank onto the couch. Animal control told me Lucky probably ran off and was gone for good. I tried to believe he found a new family, so the loss would hurt less. He found no one, I whispered. He stayed loyal to Leo. She covered her face. I didn't even visit the cemetery after the funeral. Guilt chained me here. I offered her the ledger page. Tomorrow morning they'll come again. If you claim him, they can't take him. She nodded, wiping tears. We'll go together. I owe Leo and Lucky that much. Lucky barked softly, as if sealing the agreement. Mum checked her watch. Storm's getting closer, she warned. Mrs. Carson glanced at the window, then back at Lucky. Will he stay here tonight? I shook my head. He belongs at the grave until this is settled. But we'll keep him safe. She knelt once more, pressing her forehead to Lucky's. Come back, boy. Come home. Hope courage hummed in the rain-washed air around us softly. We, left with promises thicker than rain clouds. Outside, dusk painted the sky bruised purple. As we turned the corner, lightning flashed above the cemetery hill. Lucky pulled on the leash, eager to resume his watch. I understood now. Every heartbeat he spent beside that stone was a message, whispering to the world that love never died. Tomorrow we would face Briggs, the judge, and whatever rules tried to separate a boy from his dog. Tonight, though, Lucky settled beside Leo's headstone under the yawning sky, and I sat with him, umbrella in one hand, flashlight in the other, guarding a loyalty stronger than thunder. Dawn peeled away the last shreds of storm, leaving the cemetery soaked and shining like glass. Mum's car idled by the gate, while Mrs. Carson, Layla, and I stepped onto the muddy path. Lucky trotted ahead, nose lifted, tail a proud banner. Every puddle mirrored the sky. Birds shook water from their wings, greeting the fragile peace at dawn. We reached Leo's grave just as Mr. Harlan finished trimming the wet grass. He tipped his cap. Morning, ma'am, he greeted Mrs. Carson. Been a long time, her voice quivered. Too long. Lucky placed his paws on the stone and let out a small bark that cracked the silence. Mrs. Carson knelt, tracing her son's name with trembling fingers. Tears slid, yet there was a fragile smile. I'm here, Leo, she whispered. A truck engine rumbled behind us. Orange lights flashed. Officer Briggs stepped out, clipboard tucked under his arm. 2 uniformed assistants followed, looping catchpoles like nooses. Briggs's gaze hardened. County order. The stray must be surrendered for holding. Mrs. Carson stood, straightening her shoulders. He isn't a stray. He's my son's dog, Lucky. Got papers? Briggs asked. I opened my backpack, handing him the ledger page, news clippings, and the yearbook photo. Proof enough, I said. Briggs skimmed, jaw tight. Still needs an owner of record signature. Until then, policy stands. Layla frowned. Policy has a heart, right? A small crowd gathered. Joggers, a florist, two elderly veterans who cleaned graves on Sundays. Word traveled fast. Someone whispered, "That's Leo's puppy." Briggs motioned to his team. "We'll keep him 5 days. If ownership isn't confirmed in court, he's euthanized." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Carson clutched Lucky's collar. "You can't schedule his death like a dentist." "Appointment, ma'am," Briggs replied, voice firm. "I don't make the rules." Lucky pressed against her legs, trembling. I stepped forward. "We'll fight it." A veteran leaned on his cane. "Kids, right? That dog's earned mercy." The florist nodded, placing a bouquet at Leo's stone. Briggs hesitated, eyes tracking the swelling audience. Mum slipped beside him. "Isn't there a waiver for exceptional cases?" He exhaled. "I can delay pickup until sunset. After that, he comes with us. Court hearings in 2 days." Mrs. Carson knelt again, hugging Lucky. "Sunset, then." She looked at us, eyes blazing. "We have hours to save him." The crowd dispersed, spreading news faster than wind. By noon, the town square buzzed. Layla and I printed flyers. "Save Leo's dog vigil tonight." Strangers donated candles, ribbons, spare change for legal fees. Even Mr. Harlan posted signs on the cemetery gate. Afternoon sun dried the streets, but tension thickened. Lucky rested under a sycamore while Mrs. Carson filled out affidavits at the picnic table. She paused, shaking. I never imagined paperwork could feel heavier than grief. I squeezed her hand. "He waited 11 months. He can wait a few more hours." Reporter from the local channel arrived. "Can we film Lucky?" she asked. Mrs. Carson nodded. Camera lights blinked on. The reporter crouched. "Why does this dog matter to you?" She answered softly. "Because he mattered to my son. Lucky kept Leo's memory alive when I was broken." Tears glistened, yet her voice steadied. "Now it's my turn to fight for him." Television vans aired the story. Volunteers set up tables with cocoa and lanterns beside the cemetery path. By twilight, the crowd swelled into hundreds. Candles glowed like fallen stars against deepening indigo. Briggs returned at the gate, clipboard again in hand. His assistants lingered by the truck. Seeing the sea of lights, he sighed. Didn't expect a parade. I stepped forward. Love draws a crowd. He scanned faces, then cameras. "Procedure gives me no wiggle room," he muttered. Layla lifted a candle. "Hearts do." Briggs rubbed his forehead. "Fine, I'll document the vigil." But at midnight, Mrs. Carson cut in. "We'll have the judge's emergency signature. She's reviewing Leo's journal now." Briggs's eyebrows lifted. "Journal." I produced the copied drawings. Stick figure boy and puppy under the caption, "We'll be friends forever." Lucky's tail thumped. The crowd sighed as one. Something shifted in Briggs's face. Less stone, more storm cloud ready to break. He cleared his throat. "If the judge signs, my job ends here." "Then hope wins," I said. We formed a circle around Leo's grave. I lit my candle and gave the match to Layla. Flames multiplied, casting warm halos over wet grass. A choir student hummed Amazing Grace. Voices joined, shaky but determined. Lucky lay beside the headstone, eyes half closed, as if the song cradled him. Mrs. Carson set a framed photo of Leo and Lucky against the marble. Wind fluttered Leo's drawn cape. Candlelight made it seem alive. Hours crawled. Lanterns dimmed, Cocoa cooled, yet the circle never broke. At 11:50, a courthouse sedan rolled up. Judge Ramirez stepped out, briefcase in hand. She walked through the crowd, silence following. Judge Ramirez faced Briggs. "I've signed the transfer of ownership. The dog belongs to Evelyn Carson." Cheers erupted, echoing off headstones like thunder turned joyful. Mrs. Carson sobbed. Hugging Lucky, Layla's arm wrapped my shoulders. Tears blurred every candle into a golden haze. Briggs nodded, relief and exhaustion mingling. "Then my work here is done." The crowd began singing "You Are My Sunshine," voices rising into the cool night. Lucky barked twice, almost on beat. Fireflies danced above candles, turning grief into glitter. Far above, the clouds parted, revealing a quiet moon that seemed to smile on our tiny victory. Midnight bells chimed from the distant church. I blew out my flame, heart swelling. Mrs. Carson whispered to Lucky, "Home, boy," and together they walked toward the open gate, photograph pressed to her chest. I stayed behind, touching the stone once more. "He's safe now, Leo," I said. The marble felt less cold, almost like it stored the warmth of every candle. As the last lights winked out, stars took over the vigil. Hope, I realized, shines hardest when darkness thinks it has already won. Evening shadows stretched across Mrs. Carson's living room carpet, while Lucky chased dust motes in the pale light. The court papers lay signed on the coffee table, still smelling of fresh ink and victory. Yet none of us felt done. A weight lingered, fragile and unfinished, like a song waiting for its last chord. Mum cleared her throat. "The town keeps asking if we'll hold one more vigil," she said, "a gentler one. No threats, no trucks." Mrs. Carson touched the frame of Leo hugging. "Lucky, my boy deserves a goodbye that isn't wrapped in fire trucks and fear." I nodded. "Then let's meet at sunset. Lanterns, flowers, maybe soft music." Lucky barked once, tail sweeping the floor as if he'd already approved the plan. We hurried to prepare. Layla texted classmates. Mr. Harlan promised to keep the cemetery open late. The florist donated white lilies. By 6, the sky blushed purple, and a hush settled over the town like shared breath. We walked the familiar path together, Mrs. Carson holding the leash, me carrying a small box, Mum and Layla trailing with jars of candles. Lucky trotted ahead but never tugged, guiding, not pulling. At Leo's headstone he sat with dignity, ears pricked, as though welcoming guests. People arrived quietly, the veterans, the choir kids, even Officer Briggs in plain clothes. He stood at a respectful distance, hat in hand. Teardrops gleamed on more than one cheek, but nobody spoke first. Instead, we formed a loose circle, letting the evening speak for us. I opened the box. Inside were small slips of paper and short pencils. "Write one memory or wish," I announced. "Tuck it in. The earth for Leo. Let Lucky guard them." Ripples of pen scratches and soft sniffles filled the air. Mrs. Carson wrote, folded her slip, and set it at the stone's base. Layla placed hers next, whispering, "Thank you for teaching us loyalty." Even Briggs knelt, scribbled, and slid his note into the growing mound. When every hand was empty, the choir leader hummed Amazing Grace. Voices joined, low and steady. Candle flames danced, reflecting in Lucky's bright eyes. He inched forward, dropped his favorite tennis ball on the pile of notes, and nudged it lovingly. A collective gasp fluttered around the circle. Mrs. Carson knelt, pulling a small velvet pouch from her pocket. She opened it to reveal Leo's melted dog tag, recovered from the ruins only that morning. The edges were warped, but the name Lucky still shone through soot. She pressed it into Lucky's collar. "Home at last," she whispered. Lucky licked her tears. The choir's song faded to silence. Fireflies blinked on, tiny lanterns stitching the dark. I felt the knot in my chest loosen, replaced by something weightless and warm. Mum squeezed my shoulder. Time for the lanterns. We lit each jar. Golden orbs lined the path like footprints made of light. Children scattered lily petals while veterans saluted. The cemetery, once a place of dread, glowed with gentle promise. Mrs. Carson rose, voice clear yet soft. Leo believed love was a forever word. Lucky proved him right. She unclipped the leash. Lucky didn't run. He walked to the headstone, turned 3 slow circles, then curled beside it, nose resting on the carved date. A hush settled deeper than any prayer. I stepped forward, heart pounding. "Leo, your promise kept us brave," I said. Layla joined, adding, "We'll carry it forward." One by one, everyone offered a line, weaving a quilt of simple words. Over the stone, Briggs spoke last, voice rough. "Sometimes rules need room for mercy. Thank you for reminding me." Stars ignited overhead. Crickets replaced choir voices. No one wanted to break the spell, yet night was thickening. Mum nodded toward the gate. We began packing snuffing candles with cupped hands, but leaving the jar closest to Lucky glowing. Its reflection shimmered in his half-closed eyes. Mrs. Carson knelt beside him. "I'm going home, sweet boy," she murmured. "Stay as long as you need." Lucky thumped his tail twice, permission and farewell at once. We walked back slowly. The crowd thinned to shadows. At the gate I turned, for one last look. Lucky was still there, silhouette outlined by lantern light, keeping watch beneath a sky full of promises. Outside, cool air smelled of rain-washed earth and lilies. Layla exhaled. "Feels different tonight." "It feels right," I answered Mum. Drove us home, wipers silent for once. Houses slipped by, windows glowing warm. Inside hours, I placed the empty box on my desk, then set Leo's yearbook photo beside it. The house felt lighter, as if grief itself had taken a long breath. Before bed, I opened my journal. Scribbling, "A promise kept can heal more hearts than 1,000 doctors." I taped a pressed lily from the vigil onto the page. Mum peeked in, whispering, "Proud of you, kiddo." I whispered back, "Lucky made it easy." We shared a quiet smile under the soft lamp. I crawled into bed, wearing my coat because it still smelled of candle smoke and wet grass. Outside my window, clouds parted, revealing a thin silver moon. It seemed to wink like Leo's secret approval. Sleep tugged at my eyelids, but before drifting off, I whispered to the night, "Thank you for letting love win." The answer came in memory. Lucky's steady heartbeat against the soil. Leo's laughter frozen in photographs. A town choosing mercy over rules. Morning would bring new chore shots, licensing, perhaps training classes, but none of that frightened me. We had held the vigil, and hope had stayed. As my thoughts dimmed, I pictured Lucky's lantern flickering beside the grave. The light too gentle for storms to steal. Dreams carried me like soft wings, and somewhere within them I sensed a boy and his dog running across a field no fire could reach, their shadows long, their joy endless. I smiled into my pillow, certain that neither dawn nor distance could ever erase the bond they shared or the promise we kept. Morning unfolded bright, the first sunrise in weeks that felt fearless today. Gold poured through Mrs. Carson's kitchen window, turning worn linoleum into a river of light. Lucky lay in the middle, belly up, soaking warmth like a sun's flower. His new blue collar, engraved Lucky Carson, clicked each time he breathed. Mrs. Carson hummed while whisking pancake batter. Music floated inside the house instead of smoke memories. I folded invitations for Leo's memorial planting, and Mum rinsed strawberries. Layla would arrive soon with paint for the wooden plaque meant for Leo's oak in the cemetery. Lucky rolled over, sniffed the air, and thumped his tail. I grinned. Breakfast, partner. He barked once. Mrs. Carson laughed, a real laugh. He owns the place already, she said. Mum slid a plate over. He earned it. After we ate, we loaded the trunk with spades, seeds, and a small stone. Slab carved with 3 words. Love never leaves. Lucky jumped inside, settling by lilies. His head poked between the seats as if he wanted to steer. The drive was short, yet every corner looked brighter. Neighbors waved. A florist set bouquets on her sill. Officer Briggs, directing traffic, tipped his hat. Lucky barked twice. Briggs saluted back at the gate. Mr. Harlan waited beside fresh soil. Ground's soft, he said. Mrs. Carson squeezed his hand. Thank you. We walked familiar paths. Lucky paused at Leo's headstone and sighed, as if saying, we did it. I knelt, ready to make this place bloom. Lucky licked the stone. Mum traced a circle in the grass while Layla painted the plaque sky blue, lettering Leo and Lucky, with little paw prints. Perfect, Mrs. Carson whispered. Community members trickled in, classmates, veterans, choir kids, even the reporter with her camera off. Harlan lowered the slab. Mum and I sprinkled wildflower seeds. Mrs. Carson planted the first lily, pressing her lips to its petals. Sun-warmed faces, drying tears before they fell. Mrs. Carson spoke. My son believed love was forever. Lucky proved him right. She knelt beside Lucky. Thank you, boy. Layla handed me vigil notes. I read one line. Loyal hearts bend, rules toward mercy. The crowd murmured. Lucky barked, like a period ending the sentence. We placed slips of paper into the soil. Wind rustled oak leaves, sounding like applause. The choir hummed, You Are My Sunshine. Lucky lay beside the stone, tail flicking to the rhythm. When the song faded, Mum handed out lemonade. I clinked mine against Lucky's bowl. 2 promises. Kept, I said. 2 forever friends, Layla added. 2 beginning again, Mrs. Carson finished. Lucky's slurps made everyone laugh. By noon, the garden was planted, plaques secured, seeds tucked. People drifted away, leaving quiet that felt full, not empty. Harlan wheeled tools off, whistling. Briggs drove by, window down. Looks good, he said. So does Justice, Mrs. Carson replied. Under the oak, Mrs. Carson spread a blanket. We ate sandwiches in gentle silence. Birds darted above. Lucky chased a butterfly, then collapsed. Panting, the reporter finally turned her camera on and asked to record a short message. Mrs. Carson agreed. Hands folded but steady. Tell everyone, she said, that healing starts when we choose. Kindness. The segment would air that night, reminding viewers a dog carried an entire town back to compassion. Children from Leo's class arrived last. They brought a scrapbook covered in stickers. Inside were pages of crayon memories, playground races, shared lunches, silly jokes. They set the book in a weatherproof box at the base of the oak. Riley whispered he was the fastest runner. Lucky nudged her hand, and she smiled. We passed around glass vials filled with flower seeds, bluebonnet for bravery, marigold for remembrance, daisy for innocence. Each person chose one and tipped it into the soil. The ground looked speckled. With hope, Mr. Harlan promised to water the plot every morning. A breeze carried the smell of fresh earth and lily perfume. It felt like Leo might dash around the tree, laughing. Even stern veterans wiped their eyes as the sun climbed higher. Mrs. Carson opened Leo's journal and read, "When I grow up, Lucky and I will build a treehouse where nobody feels lonely." Layla whispered, "Maybe we should build that treehouse one day." I nodded, filing the idea under things we absolutely must do. Lucky trotted around the circle, greeting each guest. He stopped beside the empty leash, barked softly, then rested. At the plaque, he was no longer watching for Leo. He was welcoming the world to remember him. Driving home with windows down, wind tugged our hair. Lucky rested his head on my shoulder. I whispered, "It's a new morning." He sighed, content. At the house, we hung Lucky's leash beside Leo's, drawing of forever friendship. Sunlight made the picture glow. Later, as dusk painted the sky coral, Lucky curled on the porch, watching birds settle. I opened my journal. On the last page I wrote, "Love never leaves. It just finds new ways to stay." Lucky nudged my knee, approving. That evening, after everyone left, we returned home tired but light inside. Lucky curled at Mrs. Carson's feet while we watched the news story together. When his face filled the screen, he tilted his head in wonder. Mrs. Carson stroked his ears and whispered, "You did good, hero." He closed his eyes, safe. Morning fog hugged the Carson porch, soft as a blanket, when Lucky stretched and greeted the day with one joyful bark. Yesterday's planting had stitched hope into all of us. Yet something unfinished buzzed beneath the quiet. Mrs. Carson sipped coffee, gaze lingering on the empty leash hook. "Even with the collar," she murmured, "it feels like paperwork can vanish. I need something stronger than certificates." I understood. Grief fears loose ends. I recalled Leo's drawings of a treehouse he planned to build. Maybe making that dream real would seal every frayed ribbon of loss. "What if we start Leo's treehouse today?" I asked Layla, arriving with a toolbox, grinned. I borrowed Dad's old blueprints. Mum followed, carrying grocery bags of nails, gloves, and peanut butter sandwiches. Lucky wagged as though appointed project foreman. We drove to the cemetery where dew jeweled the lawn. The new garden already dazzled with tiny buds. Under the oak, we unfurled blueprints across Leo's stone so he could approve. Lucky poured. The page where a ladder was sketched. Decision made. Mr. Harlan rolled up in a golf cart stacked with lumber. "Town donated scraps from the old community center," he said. "Seems right, they find new life." Briggs arrived next, off duty. Again, hauling a box of screws. "Never thought I'd turn carpenter," he joked. "But rules bend, remember." Mum guided us into teams. Sawhorses creaked, hammers sang, and scent of fresh pine mixed with lilac blooms. Lucky patrolled, tail conducting the rhythm of nails. Every thud felt like a heartbeat sinking the town. While sawing a floorboard, Layla asked if Leo had left any letters. Mrs. Carson's face shaded. "His attic desk was always jammed with paper," she whispered. "I never opened it after the fire." I glanced at Lucky. His ears twitched, toward the distant Carson house. Instinct, memory. Maybe we should look now, I said. Mrs. Carson hesitated, then handed me her house key. Take Lucky, the ladder can wait. Lucky and I sprinted through sunlit streets. At the charred house, boards still covered upper windows. Inside, dust hovered like forgotten smoke. Lucky guided me to the attic stairs. Each step creaked under guilt and time. The small desk sat warped but stubborn. I jiggled the drawer. It stuck. Lucky barked once. Encouragement. I braced my feet and yanked. The drawer slid free with a sigh, spilling a bundle of letters bound by shoelace. Ash stains smudged the first envelope, addressed to future Leo. Hands shaking, I opened it. The paper held a child's crooked handwriting. Dear me, if you're older and reading this, remember Lucky is the bravest dog. Build him a house. In the sky where storms can't reach, tears blurred ink. This was the missing final task. The treehouse wasn't just a dream. It was a promise between boy and dog. I gathered every letter, careful not to crumble fragile edges, then hurried back. As we neared the cemetery, hammer strikes paused. Curious faces turned. I spread the letters across a plywood sheet. Mrs. Carson pressed fingertips to her lips. He wrote to himself, she whispered. The choir kid Allison read aloud another. Note, Mom, if I'm gone, let Lucky guard my spot so you're never lonely. Silence wrapped the group. Even birds hushed. Mrs. Carson knelt, tears shining. Then we keep building, she said, voice steady. Not just a dust Leo's. Sky house. Renewed, we worked through noon heat. Lucky curled on a tarp of sawdust, but his eyes tracked every plank hoisted. Visitors stopped by, donating snacks or stories. One elderly woman shared how Leo once rescued her kitten from a storm drain. He believed every life deserved rescue, she said, placing a kitten-shaped weather vane in my hands for the roof. By late afternoon, the platform stood secure among branches. We raised railing pieces like castle walls. A breeze rippled through, scenting cedar and hope. From up high, the cemetery looked less like a place of endings, more like a quilt of stories. As sun slipped lower, we hammered the last board. Briggs wiped sweat. Inspection time, Lucky, he called. We helped the dog climb the new ladder. At the top, he sniffed corners, then lay down peacefully. Applause soared, echoing across stones. Mrs. Carson opened the bundle's final letter. 4. Lucky, when you miss me, climb here and watch the clouds. I'll paint messages in them. She tucked it into a small tin and placed it beneath a beam where wind chimes would sing it forever. Twilight glazed the wood golden. Layla hung the kitten weather vane. It spun, catching the fading light like a tiny lighthouse. Mom handed out sandwiches, and we picnicked in the treehouse, legs dangling, conversations soft. I leaned on the railing, heart full. Below, Leo's garden glowed with first blossoms. Hey Leo, I said to the horizon, mission complete. Lucky rested his chin on my sneaker, gaze following orange clouds that looked suspiciously like watercolor paw prints. When stars pricked the sky, we climbed down. Lucky lingered, nose tilted upward, then trotted after us, satisfied at home. I taped a photo of the finished treehouse into my journal beside the lily. Caption: Promises don't expire, they evolve. Mum read over my shoulder and nodded. She smiled. Leo would love how high that house sits. I answered, now he can see it without standing on tiptoe. We shared a small laugh. Lucky lifted. His head, bedtime, hero, Mom whispered, switching off the lamp. I tucked the blanket around him. Outside, new wind chimes under the eaves tinkled the same tune we'd heard in the branches. The treehouse was already speaking to the sky, promising more adventures tomorrow for all of us together. That night, Lucky and I fell asleep on the living room rug beneath a fort of sheets, pretending we too were in a sky house safe from storms. Dreams carried us higher than any ladder, and I swear in one cloud I saw Leo waving, the letters in his pocket fluttering like wings. Cloudless blue stretched over the fresh treehouse when we arrived at dawn, thinking the hardest battles were finished. Lucky bounded up the ladder, paws drumming like happy rain. His delighted bark echoed across gravestones, pulling me into the kind of morning that smells of sawdust and second chances. I was halfway up the rungs when a deep voice barked, "Stop right there." Inspector Hale, a tall man in a stiff city uniform, stood below with a clipboard thicker than any Bible. Behind him waited two workers in orange vests, their chainsaws resting on truck beds. Hale frowned at the structure. Unauthorized construction in historic burial grounds violates municipal code. My stomach dropped. But we got permission from Mr. Harlan, I protested. Caretaker approval isn't legal authorization, he replied. This tree comes down today. Lucky growled, placing himself between Hale and the railing. Mrs. Carson hurried over, touching Hale's sleeve. Please, this was my son's wish. He steeled his gaze. I sympathize, ma'am, but regulations protect. Sacred land. Unless you show me an exemption before noon, demolition proceeds. Noon, only hours. Mum guided me aside. We need proof, fast. Layla whispered, Town Hall archives might have something. Harlan jogged up, breathless. There's an old charter says families can erect memorial shelters as long as they're safe. Problem is, it's never been digitized. That meant dusty boxes in a basement miles away. Time ticked louder than the crows. We'll go, I said. Lucky comes to Hale, scoffed. Dogs aren't allowed in municipal buildings. His family, Mrs. Carson stated, voice shaking but firm. Hale raised an eyebrow yet said nothing. Mum's car became a race car on back roads. Lucky balanced in the back seat, nose tapping my shoulder like a metronome of urgency. Town Hall smelled of wax and old air. The receptionist blinked at our frantic faces. Archives downstairs, third door, but watch the bulbits out. We squeezed through narrow stairs into shadows. Lucky's whiskers twitched in the dim. Layla flicked her phone light, illuminating rows of battered cabinets. We split up, dust swirling with every drawer. Minutes bled away. Files thumped. Papers fluttered. Lucky sniffed one cabinet, then pawed at drawer 17B. I yanked it open. Inside lay brittle parchment labeled Founding Charter 1889. Heart racing, I scanned pages until bold script read, Families may erect wooden memorial shelters for private reflection, provided no burial plots are disturbed. A gold seal shone in candle-thin light. Yes, I shouted. Lucky barked agreement, but we needed an official stamp. Receptionist directed us to the clerk's office upstairs. Clerk O'Neill, glasses perched crookedly, listened as I explained. Shoving parchment forward, he sighed. Expedited certification costs $30. Mrs. Carson's purse held 10. Layla emptied her pockets 17. We still lacked 3. I trembled, then felt Lucky nudge my shoe. On his collar hung the old, melted tag, now a charm. Metal, but maybe valuable. I unclipped it, placing it on the desk. Will this cover? O'Neill weighed the tag in his palm, eyes softening. Worth far more than $3, kid, but I'll count it as paid. He stamped the charter, signature scratching like thunder across. Dry paper dot clock showed 11:30. We barreled outside. A city bus rumbled by. No taxi, distance too far to walk. Layla pointed at a delivery cyclist waiting at a red light. Before I could plead, he waved. Need a rush? Turns out he saw last night's news piece about Lucky. He loaded me and Lucky into the cargo trailer, while Mum followed by car with Mrs. Carson. Wind tore tears from my eyes as we sped through alleys at the cemetery gate. Chainsaws already revved. Hell signaled workers. Wait, I yelled, leaping from the trailer, parchment raised. Lucky bounded beside me, barking like a siren. Hale paused the crew and read the document. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. Charter is valid, he admitted. Workers cut engines. Relief washed over the gathering crowd. But Hale wasn't done. Safety inspection still stands. If this structure fails, it must come down. Briggs, arriving off duty again, crossed arms. Then inspect it with me. A murmur rose. People trusted Briggs now. We ascended the ladder, with Hale trailing. Floorboards didn't creak. Rails held. Lucky trotted confidently, demonstrating. Stability. Hale ran his tape measure, scribbled notes, and finally sighed. Meets code. Cheers erupted below. Mrs. Carson wept, hugging Layla. Harlan tipped his cap at the oak. The inspector descended, still serious but not cruel. You may keep the structure, but submit final plans by Friday, he said. Done, Mum replied. Shaking his hand, Son climbed high. The threat passed, but adrenaline still buzzed. Hale's truck rolled away, chainsaws silent. Lucky lay on the treehouse floor, tongue lolling. I sat beside him, stroking his fur. Good nose, I whispered. He nudged the charter, as if reminding me promises need paperwork to dot. Mrs. Carson climbed up, holding lemonade. We toasted the oak beam. Leo's skyhouse stands, she said. A soft breeze rustled leaves, sounding like Leo's distant laugh. Produced fresh paint, tracing bold letters above the doorway. Storms can't reach here. Lucky poured his approval into damp paint, leaving a golden print. Afternoon settled, gentle and bright. Birds perched on the weather-vane kitten, now spinning happily. From this height I saw the garden blooming, the plaque shining. It hit me, challenges. Would still come winter, rules. Maybe more inspectors, but we had learned how to fight them, with community, history, and a dog's unstoppable faith. I leaned back against warm wood. Hey, Lucky, I said, we just turned law into love. He sighed, eyes half closed, sun reflecting in them like tiny lanterns dot below. Visitors placed new flowers. Above, clouds drifted, shaped like stairways, and I knew Leo's promise climbed each step. Safe forever in the skyhouse, his best friend. Guarded better than any lock or code. Evening painted the sky gold. Lucky raised his muzzle, catching the last light. I whispered, we'll defend this house always. Mrs. Carson smiled, and every nail gleamed like a promise kept forever. Night slipped over the cemetery before we even realized the sun had gone. Layla waved goodbye, and Mum led Mrs. Carson to the car, leaving Lucky and me to close the paint cans. Just as I latched the ladder, a cold gust hissed through the oak. Lucky's fur bristled. He stared into the shadowed rows of stones, low growl tightening his throat. See something, boy, I whispered. A faint crunch, like a foot on gravel, answered. I snapped my flashlight up. Nothing but grave markers and moonlit fog. Still, Lucky wouldn't settle. He tugged me toward the base of the treehouse, nose digging into soft dirt newly turned for the posts. His paws uncovered a small metal box. Half-burned, edges black with soot. Inside lay a lighter marked with the logo of green. Ridge gas and a stack of crumpled receipts dated the week of Leo's fire. My pulse jumped, voices carried from the gate. Inspector Hale was back, talking to a stranger whose face stayed hidden under a hoodie. The two exchanged something shiny, then Hale walked off, climbing into his city van and leaving the hooded man alone among graves. Lucky Wind, eyes fixed on the stranger. We should go, I said, but the hooded figure turned toward us and strode forward. Lucky barked loud. The man spun and ran, bootsteps slapping wet grass. Lucky lunged. I dropped the box and followed the flashing tail through tombstones until we cornered the man at the old chapel wall. Back off, mutt, he hissed, pulling a stained rag from his pocket. The smell of gasoline stung my nose. I centered the flashlight beam on his face. It was Mr. Keller, the landlord from our building, the one who always complained about pets and late rent. Why are you here? I demanded. Keller sneered. Town loves sob stories, but that treehouse breaks property laws. I bought rights to this plot last month. I'll get rid of it, one way or another. Lucky growled deeper. Keller swung his arm, but Lucky darted, teeth flashing, tearing the rag free. Gas dripped on Keller's sleeve. He cursed and fled toward the fence. I grabbed the rag and the metal box, heart pounding. Keller disappeared into the night. Mum's headlights swept down the lane. I flagged her. Inside the car, breathless, I spilled the story. Mum's eyes widened. We need proof for police. I opened the box. The receipts showed Keller had purchased industrial solvent and accelerant 2 days before the fire that killed Leo. One receipt even bore Leo's address. Mrs. Carson's hands shook. He destroyed my home for money. Layla pointed at the lighter logo. Green Ridge Gas. Keller manages an old warehouse there. Mum pulled out her phone. Time to call Briggs. 10 minutes later, Briggs arrived with 2 deputies. He bagged the evidence, listening hard. Sarah, your testimony and this dog may solve a year-old case, he said. Mrs. Carson whispered, Lucky saw Keller that night. That's why he never left Leo's grave. He waited for justice. Lucky rested his head on her knee, eyes tired but sure. Briggs radioed for a warrant. Stay together, he ordered. Keller's dangerous. We spent the night at our house. Lucky paced windows, ears flicking at every siren. Near dawn, Briggs called. We have Keller in custody, he said. He confessed to setting the fire for insurance and planned to burn the treehouse to hide evidence. Mrs. Carson broke into quiet sobs, half grief, half relief. I hugged her, feeling Lucky press against us like glue holding cracked pieces. Later. That morning, townsfolk gathered at the treehouse again, this time with police tape around charred footprints Keller had left. Inspector Hale showed too, face pale. He approached Mrs. Carson. I gave Keller the demolition slot because he claimed ownership. I had no idea what he'd done. I'm sorry. Mrs. Carson looked at the treehouse where Leo's letters swayed in breeze. Fix it with us, she said. Hale nodded. We repaired scuffed boards and repainted Lucky's paw print. The choir kids arrived with bright chalk, drawing suns on the floor. Veterans stood guard while deputies took photos for court. At noon, Briggs Read Keller's signed statement aloud. When he finished, he knelt and scratched Lucky behind the ears. "Good work, officer," he said. The crowd cheered. Lucky barked once, then climbed to the highest corner, looking over the valley as if reporting to Leo. I followed, sitting beside him. From up there, the garden looked stronger than ever, lilies opening like little flags of peace. I whispered, "It's over now." Lucky licked my cheek, and a breeze rustled leaves with the hush of closing pages. Down below, Mrs. Carson placed a new frame beside the plaque. It showed Leo smiling in the yard, arms around Lucky, a future still alive. In his grin, Layla called up, "Speech, Sarah." I stood, heart thumping. We built this for a boy who loved wide skies and a dog who loved without end. They showed us how to fight with kindness. This house belongs to every promise we make and keep. Applause floated up. Lucky barked twice, tails sweeping sawdust like confetti. Sunlight slid through branches, spotlighting the kitten weather vane, spinning slow and happy. Mrs. Carson asked, "What will we do tomorrow?" I said, "We'll teach Lucky that life can be fun again. Maybe frisbee in the meadow." Layla laughed, "And paint welcome signs for every kid who needs a safe place." Mom added, "Leo's Sky House will host stories for years." Lucky wagged hard, promising attendance for each sunset. We stayed until evening cooled the air, sharing stories, vows, and peanut butter sandwiches. When the last visitor left, Lucky curled at the doorway, scanning fading light. I rested beside him, journal in hand, writing a single sentence. Justice is just another word for love in action. Stars blinked awake. I imagined Leo painting, them with messages only Lucky could read. And in that calm sky, every crack of yesterday finally closed. Sunrise painted the sky house gold, but peace would have to wait. Today was trial day. Reporters and neighbors crowded the courthouse steps, murmuring like bees. Lucky trotted between Mrs. Carson and me, blue collar shining, every camera flashed. On his healed scar, yet he held his head high. Inside, oak benches groaned. Layla squeezed my hand. "Think of Leo smiling," she whispered. Judge Ramirez called, "State v. Keller." Shackled, Keller stared at the floor. The prosecutor showed gas receipts and the rag Lucky tore away. Jurors flinched. Mrs. Carson testified first, voice shaking as she recalled flames stealing her boy. Briggs described the arrest. Then I stepped up, placing Leo's journal on the stand. I told how Lucky waited at the grave, how we found the hidden box, how Keller tried to burn the treehouse. Finally, I read Leo's letter. "Build Lucky a house in the sky where storms can't reach." A tear rolled down a juror's cheek. Keller mumbled excuses about debt, but Lucky's low growl filled the chamber. Closing arguments drew two portraits, a greedy landlord versus a dog that outran despair. The jury needed only an hour. "Guilty on all counts," they announced. Applause broke before the bailiff restored order. Minimum sentence, 20 years. Outside, sunlight felt lighter. Mrs. Carson told the press, "This verdict belongs to Leo and the bravest dog alive." The mayor presented Lucky a bronze tag inscribed, "Honorary Town Guardian." Lucky wagged so hard it clinked like a tiny cymbal. We met at the park for lemonade and promise-making. Choir kids practiced "You Are My Sunshine." During the picnic, an email pinged my phone. A publisher wanted to turn the story into a picture book. Proceeds for burn victims. Layla almost dropped her cup. Illustrations in the treehouse. She cheered. Evening guided us back, to the cemetery carrying lanterns shaped like tiny cabins. In the sky house, we hung a banner reading "Welcome Home." We played the choir, recording on Mum's speaker, while lanterns, each tied to a packet of wildflower seeds, drifted skyward. Lucky watched them rise, eyes shimmering dot. Mrs. Carson sat on the floor, Lucky's head in her lap. For the first time since the fire, she whispered, "I feel peace instead of ash." I handed her the publisher's email. She pressed it to her heart. We added a brass wind bell shaped like a paw beside the weather vane. When breeze moved, it chimed, "Safe, safe, safe." Harlan installed a small mailbox labeled "Gratitude Post" for thank you notes to every helper. Briggs climbed up, leaving the first card. "Heroes come with tails." Stars blinked on. From the doorway, Lucky surveyed garden, plaques, and lilies glowing in moonlight. I thought I saw Leo beside him, freckles bright, but maybe it was just starlight. Layla teased on the walkout. "What's next, algebra?" I laughed. "Justice and homework share a due date." Mrs. Carson hugged me. "Some grades matter forever," she said. Back home, I wrote one new line in my journal. "Truth runs faster when a loyal dog leads." As I clicked off the lamp, Lucky curled at my feet, badge gleaming. I told him, "Wake me if clouds spell hello." He rested a paw on my arm, promise accepted. Outside, the wind bells sang into the night, sounding exactly like two friends laughing. Beneath a flame-proof sky at 6 a.m., before we even dressed, church bells chimed across town. Volunteers gathered outside our porch, handing out blue ribbons, the color of Lucky's collar to pin on everyone attending court. "Show unity," Mr. Harlan said, fastening one over my heart. Lucky sniffed his fingertips and gave approval. With a quick lick, the ride downtown felt longer than the valley itself. Mum drove carefully, but traffic crawled. Cars sported window paint, reading "Justice for Leo." Every red light felt like a mountain. Lucky rested his chin on the seat, watching. People wave hope like small flags. Security scanned us, wands beeping over coin collections in nervous pockets. An elderly juror tripped. Lucky steadied her by nudging her cane back into her palm. She whispered, "He knows kindness better than any lawyer," and winked. While attorneys huddled, Judge Ramirez allowed the bailiff to bring water for Lucky. "No rule against compassion," the judge said. The courtroom softened. During recess, media vans parked like gigantic buzzards outside. They asked me for a quote. I said, "Fire tried to erase laughter, but loyalty rewrote the ending." Cameras flashed. Lucky tilted his head. When testimony resumed, a fire investigator demonstrated how the accelerant patterns matched Keller's purchases. He held up a charred section of floorboard saved from the ruins. The smell of smoke filled the room, and Mrs. Carson's shoulders shook. Defense argued faulty wiring, but the investigator pointed to melted copper traced by gasoline lines. Lucky barked, punctuating the truth. The judge smiled faintly before calling order. After the verdict, the mayor announced July 24th would be Leo and Lucky Day, matching Leo's birthday. Children cheered, already planning parades. With paper-matched dogs, Layla said we'd chalk paw prints along Main Street. On the courthouse lawn, tourists snapped photos with Lucky. A little boy whispered, "You're real," and hugged him carefully. Lucky licked away the boy's tears, half joy, half leftover sorrow. That night, before returning home, we stopped at the fire station. The chief handed Mrs. Carson a polished brass bell recovered from the ruins. "Hang it where he can hear laughter again," he said. We drove past the cemetery once more. Lanterns still glowed faint in the oak's arms. I rolled down the window. Night air smelled of pine and fresh paint. Lucky stuck his head out, ears flapping like sails, soaking freedom. I swear he smiled. Before bed, Mum read the verdict article. Online, comments poured in from strangers. Lucky made me hug my dog. Leo's light reached Ohio. Kindness wins. I scrolled through every note until the screen blurred. Lucky nudged the phone aside, sighed, and curled closer, reminding me that real gratitude beats digital applause for good. Sunrise painted the skyhouse gold, but peace would have to wait. Today was trial day. Reporters and neighbors crowded the courthouse steps, murmuring like bees. Lucky trotted between Mrs. Carson and me, blue collar shining. Every camera flashed. On his healed scar, yet he held his head high. Inside, oak benches groaned. Layla squeezed my hand. Think of Leo smiling, she whispered. Judge Ramirez called. State v. Keller. Shackled. Keller stared at the floor. The prosecutor showed. Gassed receipts and the rag Lucky tore away. Jurors flinched. Mrs. Carson testified first, voice shaking as she recalled flames stealing her boy. Briggs described the arrest. Then I stepped up, placing Leo's journal on the stand. I told how Lucky waited at the grave, how he found the hidden box, how Keller tried to burn the treehouse. Finally, I read Leo's letter. Build Lucky a house in the sky where storms can't reach. A tear rolled down a juror's cheek. Keller mumbled excuses about debt, but Lucky's low growl filled the chamber. Closing arguments drew two portraits, a greedy landlord versus a dog that outran despair. The jury needed only an hour. Guilty on all counts, they announced. Applause broke before the bailiff restored order. Minimum sentence, 20 years. Outside, sunlight felt lighter. Mrs. Carson told the press, this verdict belongs to Leo and the bravest dog alive. The mayor presented Lucky a bronze tag inscribed, Honorary Town Guardian. Lucky wagged so hard it clinked like a tiny cymbal. We met at the park for lemonade and promise-making. Choir kids practiced You Are My Sunshine. During the picnic, an email pinged my phone. A publisher wanted to turn the story into a picture book. Proceeds for burn victims. Layla almost dropped her cup. Illustrations in the treehouse. She cheered. Evening guided us back to the cemetery, carrying lanterns shaped like tiny cabins. In the sky house we hung a banner reading Welcome Home. We played the choir recording on Mum's speaker while lanterns, each tied to a packet of wildflower seeds, drifted skyward. Lucky watched them rise, eyes shimmering. Mrs. Carson sat on the floor, Lucky's head in her lap. For the first time since the fire, she whispered, I feel peace instead of ash. I handed her the publisher's email. She pressed it to her heart. We added a brass wind bell shaped like a paw beside the weather vane. When breeze moved, it chimed, safe, safe, safe. Harlan installed a small mailbox labeled Gratitude Post for thank you notes to every helper. Briggs climbed up, leaving the first card. Heroes come with tails. Stars blinked on. From the doorway, Lucky surveyed garden, plaques, and lilies glowing in moonlight. I thought I saw Leo beside him, freckles bright, but maybe it was just starlight. Layla teased on the walkout, what's next algebra? I laughed. Justice and homework share a due date. Mrs. Carson hugged me. Some grades matter forever, she said. Back home, I wrote one new line in my journal. Truth runs faster when a loyal dog leads. As I clicked off the lamp, Lucky curled at my feet, badge gleaming. I told him, "Wake me if clouds spell hello." He rested a paw on my arm, promise accepted. Outside, the wind bell sang into the night, sounding exactly like two friends laughing. Beneath a flame-proof sky, at 6 a.m., before we even dressed, church bells chimed across town. Volunteers gathered outside our porch, handing out blue ribbons, the color of Lucky's collar to pin on everyone attending court. "Show unity," Mr. Harlan said, fastening one over my heart. Lucky sniffed his fingertips and gave approval. With a quick lick, the ride downtown felt longer than the valley itself. Mum drove carefully, but traffic crawled. Cars sported window paint reading "Justice for Leo." Every red light felt like a mountain. Lucky rested his chin on the seat, watching. People wave hope like small flags. Security scanned us, wands beeping over coin collections in nervous pockets. An elderly juror tripped. Lucky steadied her by nudging her cane back into her palm. She whispered, "He knows kindness better than any lawyer," and winked. While attorneys huddled, Judge Ramirez allowed the bailiff to bring water for Lucky. "No rule against compassion," the judge said. The courtroom softened. During recess, media vans parked like gigantic buzzards outside. They asked me for a quote. I said, "Fire tried to erase laughter, but loyalty rewrote the ending." Cameras flashed. Lucky tilted his head. When testimony resumed, a fire investigator demonstrated how the accelerant patterns matched Keller's purchases. He held up a charred section of floorboard saved from the ruins. The smell of smoke filled the room, and Mrs. Carson's shoulders shook. Defense argued faulty wiring, but the investigator pointed to melted copper traced by gasoline lines. Lucky barked, punctuating the truth. The judge smiled faintly before calling order. After the verdict, the mayor announced July 24th would be Leo and Lucky Day, matching Leo's birthday. Children cheered, already planning parades, with paper-matched dogs. Layla said we'd chalk paw prints along Main Street. On the courthouse lawn, tourists snapped photos with Lucky. A little boy whispered, "You're real," and hugged him carefully. Lucky licked away the boy's tears, half joy, half leftover sorrow. That night, before returning home, we stopped at the fire station. The chief handed Mrs. Carson a polished brass bell recovered from the ruins. "Hang it where he can hear laughter again," he said. We drove past the cemetery once more. Lanterns still glowed faint in the oak's arms. I rolled down the window. Night air smelled of pine and fresh paint. Lucky stuck his head out, ears flapping like sails, soaking freedom. "I swear," he smiled. Before bed, Mum read the verdict article. Online, comments poured in from strangers. Lucky made me hug my dog. Leo's light reached Ohio. Kindness wins. I scrolled through every note until the screen blurred. Lucky nudged the phone aside, sighed, and curled closer, reminding me that real gratitude beats digital applause for good. Did this story touch your heart? Give it a thumbs up, share it around, and drop your location in the comments.